Hello, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. Welcome to Adventist Angels Watchman Radio, your number one Christian radio, sending waves to the ends of the earth. My name is Evangelist King Osiemo from the Horn of Africa. Today, I'm privileged to share good news to you. We are going to study Lesson 8, Bible study, briefly, so that we can understand the message God gives for us these days. So we will go directly to the point. The message mostly comes from the book of Revelation chapter 12, and this is where we shall go and deal with for now. So stay tuned as we encounter on this. The Bible says that we are going to study more about chapter 12, which speaks to a large extent about the devil, or a controversy which began in heaven. And this is what we are going to deal with as for this time. And we are going to look upon a various angel who fell. Not really a various prince, but a various angel who fell. A prince was not a prince, but he was an angel. So let us go directly to the message which comes from the book of Revelation chapter 12 verses 1 to 12 or to 17. Revelation chapter 12 verse 1, the Bible says, "And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her forehead and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she being with child cried, travailing in parts, and pain to be delivered. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his head, and his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. And she brought forth a man-child, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. And her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days." So this woman, as we know from prophecy or from Corinthians, directly goes to the church. A woman represents a church in this sense. You can look on 2 Corinthians chapter 11 verses 2. Ephesians chapter 5 also gives us the same message, whereby the Lord says a woman to be faithful to the man as to Jesus and his church. It was represented. So let us now consider what other things mean. Here we are seeing a woman clothed with the sun and the moon and under her feet. That cannot happen in the real sense, but it means here a woman represents a church, and the sun represents the righteousness of Jesus Christ. You can look on the book of Malak, chapter 4 verses 2. Jesus is the Son of righteousness. And the moon here under her feet represents the dispensations which was foreshadowing what was the gospel which was to come in these days concerning the church and its mission upon the earth. A crown of 12 stars represents the 12 tribes of Israel, which were chosen of Jacob. And also it represents in our gospel dispensation, it represents a Christian era churches or a true church for our time all over the world. And you can look on James chapter 1 verses 1 gives the message. In verses 2, we see a child, we see the woman who was about to give a child, and the child cried, traveling the path, and paid to be delivered. Being with child cried. This is the woman who was crying, for she was about to give birth to a man child. And there appeared another one in heaven, behold, a great red dragon. The red dragon, as we read in chapter 12 of Revelation, verse 9, is that old serpent who is also called the devil, or Lucifer, who fell from heaven. This is the devil, having 7 heads and 10 horns. 7 heads and 10 horns means that he was using nations to rule, or to use CTC deception means to rule. And 7 crowns upon his head is the same nations. In verses 4, and they drew the third part of the stars of heaven. A tail here actually in Isaiah, the tail symbolizing means used to deceive. You can read in Isaiah chapter 9 verses 14 and 15. Isaiah chapter 9 verses 14 and 15, and Revelation chapter 9 verses 10. You could get that a tail represents false teachings, because the Bible says a prophet that teaches lies shall be the tail. So he used the deception to deceive these people. Who were he deceiving? He said that his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven. The stars here represents the sons of men. You can read in Job chapter 38 verse 7, says, were you there when the morning stars sang for the Lord? These were the angels, or the sons of God. And they did cast them to the earth. So he fell with the third part of the angels of heaven through his deception. And the dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered to devour her child. He was about to kill the man child, which is Jesus Christ, who came to the earth. This is represented by the devil, who was working by men. As we have seen above, he was using the nations, and he was about to kill them. It was represented by Herod, who said that if you see that man child, you said to the wise men, come and tell me so that I can worship him. But in real sense, he wanted to kill him because he was jealous of him. Verses 5, the Bible says, and she brought forth a man child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. This man child is Jesus Christ, and he was to rule all nations. This is the King of Kings, and he was to rule them with a rod of iron. This is the kingdom which Daniel saw and told to Nebuchadnezzar, which is the stone which was to fall, and it was to crush all nations, all empires, all rulers, and it was to be set upon the earth and rule all nations without end, an everlasting kingdom. And that child was caught up unto God and to his throne. This one you can read from Acts chapter 1 verse 11, whereby we saw he went to heaven and he was taken by the crowd. So he was taken up, and later on we saw Stephen saying, I saw the Son of God sitting in the right hand of God. So he went to his throne where he came from. Jesus is the Son of God, and is God in that particular sense. In verses 6, and the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had a place prepared of God, and they should feed her there 1,260 days. So the woman fled into the wilderness. There was a place which was prepared for the church of God, and this place is whereby he was told the commandments of God about the sanctuary. And here is where we saw later on Reformation coming. That is a period which is here said to be 1260 days, which is prophetically 1260 years. In Ezekiel chapter 4 verse 6, you get the same message. A place was prepared of God before all that she was to live there. So it is a controversy even, and it is continuing upon the earth. And this is what brings about what we expect in these last days. It's a kind of a war over worship, and this is what we should get to know in these days we do live upon the earth. and us also to know the message which we have been given in these last days, which is the three angels' message to be given to the ends of the earth over the issue of worship, so that men should recognize our God, the Creator, and even Jesus Christ, His Son, who is also the Creator. Now we continue with the message. The woman and the dragon. Revelation chapter 12 verses 1 to 6. So in vision, John sees two great signs. The first is a woman pregnant with a child, and the second is a dragon. What do these signs or symbols represent? And what do these verses teach? A woman in the Bible is used as a symbol for God's people. 2 Corinthians chapter 11 verses 2. A chaste woman stands for faithful believers, while a harlot, who is represented in Revelation chapter 17, stands for apostate Christians. The woman in Revelation chapter 12 first symbolizes Israel, to whom the Messiah came, his purpose he came for. Revelation chapter 12 verses 1 to 5. So in verses 13 to 17, she stands for the true church that gives birth to the remnant. The woman is portrayed as clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet. The sun represents the glory of Christ's character, his righteousness, as we have seen in Mark chapter 4 verses 2. He is the light of the world. John chapter 8 verses 12. And his people are to reflect the light of God's loving character to the world. Matthew chapter 14 verses 16. The moon, as the lesser light, was also seen as it was created in Genesis chapter 1 verse 16. It was pointing to the Old Testament prophecies foreshadowing the work of Christ in the gospel era. The next thing John sees in the vision is a fiery red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns. So this red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns of Revelation chapter 12 verses 3, this dragon is later on represented as Satan in Revelation 12 verses 9. And this tail was symbolizing the means used to deceive, as we have seen in Isaiah chapter 14 verses 15. Also Revelation chapter 9 verses 10. So she dragged a third of the stars from heaven down to the earth. This action shows that having fallen from his exalted position in the heaven, as we shall see in Isaiah chapter 14 verses 12 to 15, chapter 14 verses 12. What does this tell us? Let us look in the book of Isaiah, if we can find it, so that we can know what it says. The book of Isaiah chapter 14 verses 2, the Bible says, How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut to the ground, which did weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thy heart, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Yet thou shalt be brought down to earth, to the sides of the pit. So the devil fell down from heaven. He was at first known as Lucifer. Satan means the deceiver, and that's how the name came, Satan. It's the son of the morning, is an angel. The morning star sang. He was also an angel. He was cut down to the ground. He was rejected, cast out from the throne of God, but he came to the ground himself with the rods, as we shall look thereafter. Verse 13, the Bible says, he is exalting himself above heaven, and he's saying, I. He loves himself. That's why he wants to be like God. He wanted to ascend even to the heights of God. to the crowds to be like God. So he wanted worship. So that's the reason we say the final war will be over worship. But the Lord says he shall be brought down to hell later on. Let us continue with the message. It's the controversy which we are in. This action shows that having fallen from his exalted position in heaven, Satan was able to deceive a third part of the angels. These fallen angels are the demons who assisted the devil in opposing God and his work of salvation. As we shall see, we see in 1 Timothy chapter 4 verses 1. So Revelation also uses the dragon described as having 7 heads and 10 horns as a symbol of those agents in the world used by Satan, like pagan Rome, as we see in Revelation chapter 12 verses 4. We saw also spiritualism, as we see in Revelation chapter 16 verses 13, and also false ideologies which he has sent to the world of spiritualism is also including immortality of the soul and such things, deceptions that when a man dies goes to heaven. But we see that the spirit goes to heaven, but the body is left in the earth. A man is sleeping. As Jesus used the example of sleep or rest. The dragon is said to be Satan, and it was that moved upon a rod to put the Savior to death. But the chief agent of Satan in making war upon Christ and his people during the first centuries of the Christian era was the Roman Empire, in which paganism was the prevailing religion. Thus, the dragon primarily represents Satan. It is in a second sense a symbol of pagan Rome, as we see in the book written by Ellen G. White, The Great Controversy, page 438. So we shall continue with the message here, so that we can see what has given unto us. We continue reading Revelation the book of Revelation chapter 12 verse 7. The Bible says, and there was war in heaven. That's something which you cannot imagine it can be in heaven. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and they prevailed not. Neither was there a place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent, called the devil and Satan, which deceived the whole world. Consider all those words. He was cast into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Verse 10, and I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now is come salvation and strength, and the kingdom of our God, and the power of his Christ. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accuses them before our God day and night. So we see what the devil was doing in heaven. He was accusing others. That is the character we are finding here in a special sense. So Satan's war against God and his authority was focused upon the character of God and his role from the very beginning, and it will continue to escalate just before Christ comes the second time. That's why we stand firm to overcome these temptations, because it says that he has come down with great wrath. He is very angry. This is the one who is exalting himself. He says, I will ascend above the heights of the crowds. I will be like the Most High God. This is what he was tempting the Savior on the wilderness, Christ. Now, we understand what his aim is upon the earth. He is to deceive the nations. This is the very devil whom we should better position of overcoming in these days. Revelation chapter 12 verse 9, Satan is called the serpent of all. And what connections exist between Genesis 3 and 15 and the dragon's attempt to destroy the seed of the woman as soon as it was born? So we try to see the connection here is that from the beginning, Satan was waiting for the Messiah, the child, to be born in order to destroy him. When the Messiah was finally born, Satan used the pagan Rome, as symbolized as the dragon in Revelation chapter 12 verses 4, to try to destroy him. You can also see in Matthew chapter 2 verses 13 to 16. Matthew chapter 2 verses 13 to 16. But the child was caught up to God and his throne, as we see in Revelation chapter 12 verses 5. He was finally taken, as we see in the book of Acts chapter 1 verses 11, where the apostles record that he was taken up to his Father. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives to the death. Therefore, rejoice, ye heavens, and you that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he had but a short time. And when the dragon saw that he was cast unto the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the man-child. And the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, where she hath no rest for a time, and times, and half a time, from the face of the serpent. The woman fled into the wilderness with wings of a great eagle. So these 2 things which he had is the Sabbath, and also he had marriage on the other hand. Those are the 2 pillars of God. So he fled into the wilderness to a place which was set for him to live there. Verse 15, the Bible says, and the serpent, now it is using the serpent, was cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. So this water or this flood is the nations which he was using to try to kill or to make Christianity come to an end. And the earth helped the woman. The earth is America, the beast we shall see in Revelation chapter 13 verses 11 downwards. So this earth or this America helped the woman, it helps the church. This is whereby the people who were persecuted in Rome, pagan Rome and Papa Rome, fled to America for freedom, whereby it came up with laws which helped the church. And the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. So this church was keeping the commandments of God and the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is the description for the church of God in these last days. They keep the commandments of God and they have the testimony of Jesus Christ. To have the testimony of Jesus Christ, Revelation chapter 19 verse 10 tells us that these people, they have the spirit of prophecy. That is what distinguishes them. They keep the commandments of God, and the testimony of Jesus Christ is also the spirit of prophecy, as we see by Ellen G. White, a prophetess who was sent unto us in this last generation or this last movement, which came from Egypt and going to Canaan, which is in heaven. Egypt, we came from Rome, and now we are heading to heaven. And the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the flood which the dragon cast out of his mouth. So America came up with laws which assisted the woman or the church. But the Bible says that these things are going to escalate and will speak as a dragon, as we shall see in Revelation chapter 13 verses 11 downwards about America. What I can add here is concerning is that there was war in heaven. This war was not a physical war, it's a spiritual war, whereby it was deception, as we saw the casting by the tail, it was meaning deceptions. A prophet that teaches lies shall be the tail. So it is a deception which he used to manage to come down with angels from heaven, and that is what he on the earth. But there is a victory here which we have seen, which came thereafter. Also to see on Revelation chapter 12 verses 7 to 9, Satan cast down to the earth. You read in Revelation chapter 12 verse 7 to 9, we see that which talks about a war in heaven. What was the nature of that war that resulted in Satan's expulsion from heaven? Satan was cast out of heaven at the beginning of the great controversy when he rebelled against God's government. He wanted to seize God's throne in heaven and be like the Most High, as we have seen in Isaiah chapter 14 verses 12 to 15. He stood in open revolt against God, but was defeated and exiled on earth. However, by deceiving Adam and Eve, Satan usurped Adam's rule over this world, as we look in Luke chapter 4 verses 6 in the deceptions. As the self-proclaimed ruler of this world, in Luke chapter 12 verses 31, as he said, Satan claimed the right to attend the heavenly council as Earth's representative. We saw it in Job chapter 1 verses 6 to 12, where he appeared before the face of the Lord, because that time he was not closed from going to heaven. However, since his defeat at the cross, Satan and his fallen angels have been confined to the earth as a prison until they receive their punishment. You can see in 2 Peter chapter 2 verses 4 and Jude chapter 6. By his death, Jude 6, by his death, Jesus redeemed what was lost, and Satan's true character was revealed before the universe. It was like a video, so it was revealed, it was exposed. Satan saw that his disguise was torn away. His administration was laid open before the unfallen angels and before the heavenly universe. He had revealed himself as a murderer. By shedding the blood of the Son of God, he had uprooted himself from the sympathies of the heavenly beings. Henceforth, his work was restricted. You can see in Ellen G. White, The Desire of Ages, page 761. So before the whole universe, the rule over the earth was transferred from Satan to Jesus, as we see in Matthew chapter 28, verses 19, 17 to 20. Jesus said that all power is given unto me in heaven and in the earth. And he was proclaimed Jesus was proclaimed the legitimate ruler of heaven and the earth. And also in Ephesians chapter 1, verses 20 to 22, Philippians chapter 2, verses 9 to 11. So Jesus foretold this event, saying, now judgment is upon this world. Now the ruler of this world will be cast out, as we see in John chapter 12, verses 31. With this judgment on Satan, the salvation and strength and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ have come. Revelation chapter 12 verse 10 is about the winning and salvation which came upon the earth by the blood of Jesus Christ and his power which he overcame. Satan still has limited power to harm God's people on earth, but it is with a realization that he has a short time, and we should pray. By prayer we shall overcome him, and Jesus Christ shall send us strength to overcome. Revelation chapter 12 verses 12 gives the message. Although his time is indeed short, he is doing all that he can in trying to overcome us in this last generation. So what are we supposed to do in this sense?